What is a game that you would call your favorite game? We all have a situation where we are constantly changing what our favorite game is, whether that's because games are constantly coming out, our expectations are changing, our opinions are changing, things that we enjoy change. Personally, it's just because on a Wednesday I'm thinking about one game and yep, that's my favorite game, and on a Thursday I'm thinking about another game and yep, that's my favorite game. Today, on a Saturday, my favorite game is an old game from PlayStation 2 era called Radiata Stories. Radiata Stories was a game that was recommended to me by a friend in high school, and I am so glad that I took that recommendation because seriously, it is a game that has affected me like no other game. I wish that I still had my physical copy. I lent it to a friend a long time ago, and I no longer have it, and that just makes me very upset that I don't have a physical copy of it. I will have gameplay going underneath this from an emulator that I have that I will record, but yeah, Radiata Stories is a beautiful game that just, I honest to God think it's timeless. The art style is so pretty and the animations are so great. They were goofy even for then, I think. So nothing has changed. They're still very goofy. Radiata Stories is pretty much a very, very typical hero's journey story. You start off with a character named Jack. He is our hero. He is very much your typical hero. He starts off very happy-go-lucky. He is a child, effectively. He is very young, very stupid, very egotistical. He comes from a lineage that is very famous. His father was an incredibly famous, very talented swordsman, and he has grown up in a very small village where pretty much he feels like a hero. He wants to be like his father, who is, by the way, dead. It's right off the bat. That's not a spoiler. It's like very early on that you like within the first 5 minutes, his dad is dead. And he obviously wants to take after his father, who was a knight for the kingdom of Radiata. Radiata Stories is a fantasy game. It has, elves. It has, they're elves. I personally think of them as fairies, but they are called elves. And you have dwarves, you have dragons. It was the perfect game for me because in high school and middle school and elementary school, I was known as Dragon Girl. For very specific reasons, I loved dragons, so this game had everything for me. And Jack starts off as returning to Jack, he is a very, very egotistical character in the beginning. And as Jack evolves, as Jack matures, the world around him matures. And I just think that the way the story evolves, and even the way the gameplay evolves, which I will get into, was so smooth and it transitioned so well together that the game, I could play it literally over and over and over again. If there was a game that I had to play for the rest of my life, it'd probably be Radiata Stories because, first of all, the game is not exactly linear. There is a lot of open world aspects to Radiata Stories. The main story does not have to be continued like all at once. You can put the main story on hold and do some side quests. In the game, eventually you unlock the ability to recruit people around the kingdom of Radiata. Some of them are much harder to recruit than others. And some of them are literally just, hey, I lost my tooth in a sewer. I literally think that's the quest for one of them. I think he's the tutorial dude. So you go into the sewer and you find his tooth and then you recruit him. They're not people who are integral to the story. I think you can literally recruit just about everyone in the kingdom of Radiata. The roster is massive. The only reason to recruit them is literally, I think I don't remember if they have side stories. Some of them might. I don't remember, so don't quote me on that, but the main story is not affected by almost any of them. It's just so that you can have some variety in your party. And I thought that was so cool. Like, I was so big on trying to recruit everybody for no reason. There were no achievements back in this time. And, the game was just about, like, you're this character who wants to take after his dad. Now, you have two very important characters. You have Jack, who has no talent. He is an ego the size of Jupiter. And he's grown up in this very small town with only his sister taking care of him. And he has almost no talent, and he goes off to try to join the Knights. And you have this other character who is the exact opposite of him. Her name is Ridley, and she is Chef Kisses, my favorite character in all of video game history. I love her to pieces. I would die for her. I love Ridley. If I could cosplay her, I would, but I will never find a pre-made cosplay of Ridley, and making it is very daunting. So Ridley is a character who has a huge amount of expectations on her. She is very regal. She's very stiff and very afraid of failure. She is, in the beginning, just as flawed as Jack. She's also kind of egotistical. Everybody's kind of egotistical. And they butt heads quite a bit in the beginning, and it's great. I love their relationship. I love the banter. It's beautiful. I love Ridley. Some people don't like her, and I think you're all wrong. It's just my opinion, but your opinion is wrong. I'm kidding. Don't. Shh. It's a joke. But one of my favorite things about the game is just simply how everyone grows. As Jack grows, in the beginning, his egotism actually is it eventually culminates in a very horrible instant. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying not to obviously give spoilers. There will be some spoilers in this. It's unavoidable talking about a game that I love, but I will try to be as vague as possible. In the game, there's obviously a turning point for Jack where he is no longer able to be this egotistical person. His worldview is shattered by a mistake that he causes that almost kills him and several people around him. And this gets him kicked out of the Knights. I mean, literally, that was a spoiler. Sorry. But, obviously, it changes his entire world. And everything that was important to him is gone. And he doesn't want to go home because now he's a failure and everything is just, it's very hero's journey, right? Like, he thought this thing about himself and realizes that it was very naive. And he has to try to find a new way, and he becomes this new person, this sort of like stripped of all of that. And as the game progresses, they show this in a very, very fascinating way that I absolutely adore. So the game is extremely customizable. Here I'm going to kind of dip into gameplay mechanics instead of the story. Well, I'll return to some story later because there's something that I really love about the story that I'll come back to. But in the gameplay, we have a highly customizable character and a highly customizable combat system. And the way the game works is it introduces complexities in the combat system to you very slowly. In the beginning, Jack has no control over the party. Very little control. I mean, you can request healing. The game is like partially a JRPG. You are in the overworld. You are running around. There are actual visual or visible enemies. There are no surprise jump scare battles that attack you on as you're wandering around on the map. It's not like you walk 2 steps. It's not like Pokemon. It's a great description. Instead, the enemies are on the map, and when you touch them, they teleport you to, I don't know how best to explain this, but they teleport you to a static battle room, depending on where you are, and then you have free control of your character, I should say, and you are able to control the battle from there. As the game progresses, you eventually get total control over the party, and you become the party leader. And you are able to actually give commands for formations. Now, I know of this part. As a person and as a gamer, I function best as a tank. I do not do well with strategizing. I brute force my way through games. As a brief aside, in Final Fantasy VII, I beat Sephiroth at level 45 because I couldn't be bothered to level grind, and I brute forced my way through that fight because I had Knights of the Round. I don't do well with strategy. So, just saying, this game had extremely very detailed strategizing. You eventually unlock different types of formations. So again, everything is gradual. You are not suddenly given like 40, formations. You unlock these formations as your character grows. And you are able to give your party commands to get into those formations. So you have, like a formation of a line, depending on what you're fighting. And then there are mechanics around that. Enemies that you fight can also get into formations, and you want to try to break those formations in order to stagger them and weaken them. It's very cool, very amazing game. I brute forced my way through it. And, obviously you have the ability to choose different types of people who are in your party. You have mages, you have other things. Is basically like a physical character and a mage character, if I remember correctly. But one of the other amazing things is that Jack has the ability to use different types of weapons. And the way they handle weapons is very interesting. So if Jack is using a sword, and all of a sudden you decide, I want to be an axe wielder, you can do that. You can go off and buy an axe. However, if you do that, you have to learn all of the abilities for the axe. You don't have to relearn it. Like if I learn all of the abilities for the axe and then I decide to go to the sword, I already have all of the abilities I've already learned for the sword, so I can switch whenever. You just have to, like, each weapon has its own state of leveling. So Jack has a level which affects his stats, but each weapon that he uses is its own level up system, if that makes sense. Now, as you learn these abilities for these weapons, you are able to assign those abilities into a combo chain. So, for example, in a video game, if you were to press triangle, 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 you'd probably have a left, this swing, and then a finisher. In Radiata Stories, you build that combo, and as Jack levels up, he gains more and more points so that you can give him more and more abilities. You absolutely can screw this up. I have learned the hard way in my time that you can screw this up. If you put a finisher as your first move, you will very likely die in your next fight, because there is nothing worse than the time it takes for you to get from a finishing move to the fast moves. So you always want to make sure that your fast moves, obviously, it makes sense when you say it out loud, but when you're putting the moves together, you're like, oh, this is a very high, powerful move. Then you put it there and you're like, oh, that's because it's a finisher. And then you just have to run around and hope that your comrades kill the enemies because you're useless. Now, back to the story briefly. The game, again, the world grows with Jack. In the beginning of the game, the world is goofy, silly, stupid. So is Jack. The world's not stupid, but the world is very, lighthearted, very silly, very, not a problem. Everybody's happy. There's no problems in this world. That's because Jack isn't aware of the problems. When Jack becomes more self-aware and he starts to see things around him as they are, he becomes aware of racism between, obviously, humans and, the elves, or humans and the dwarves. He becomes aware of these problems that are happening in the world and the fact that things are not that great, actually. And so probably the best part about Radiata Stories is this one pivotal moment, which I cannot really explain anything about, that changes the entire course of the game. Up to that point, you have no idea that this pivotal decision is going to happen. There's absolutely no hint that you're going to have to do this. Up to that point, you have been recruiting people, you've been befriending people, and when that pivotal decision comes, it will change who you have access to. Some of your friends will no longer be available to you, people that you've recruited in the game. Some of them have stories, some of them are part of the main story, some of them have nothing to do with anything. They're just people that you recruited from, the Mages Guild. And it's such an interesting development because you feel it. You feel that sudden wall coming down. You have chosen a side. That's basically what it comes down to. And it gets very, very emotional very fast. Oh man, I'm thinking about it and I'm getting emotional. I love this game so much. Cannot recommend it more. And as a finisher to this episode, because I feel like I've mostly touched on everything for the game. It really is just an incredible game. So great. So again, I don't know if it had a following in the States. I only know 2 people. And I mean, back when I played this game, there were no hashtags. There were no ways to connect with people who liked something. There's no fandom, except what was in your school. So there was no way to connect with people on something that you enjoyed unless they were literally in your physical sphere of knowledge. I wasn't on the internet, not really. There was the internet, obviously. I'm not that old, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. Now I can go on Twitter, type a hashtag, and boom, I got a whole fandom right there. Back then, not so much. I was not aware of it. Not a lot of people was aware of. Yeah, sure, that was English. But I remember I was at Anime Expo one year, And I was walking around, and obviously at a lot of these expos for like anime and Japan and stuff, they have these tables where they have booklets or magazines or game guides that you could only get from Japan or Little Tokyo if you're lucky. And I was walking past because I like to look at books. I have a problem with books. And the first thing I saw was this beautiful monstrosity. It is in Japanese. I absolutely cannot read it. But I saw this and was like, all right, cool. How much for this? Because I need it. There was only one copy. And I was like, all right, well, I'm taking this home. I don't even care. Here's my card. Charge me. And then I couldn't buy anything else for the rest of the con. But, I mean, it is such a beautiful, like, look at this. It's so beautiful. It's just, it was so worthwhile to get. Let me get to some of this concept art because, like, there's concept art in here, and I love it. Yeah, here we go. Oh, yeah, look at that. That's not very detailed, but, you know, it is beautiful. And, oh, here we go. Yeah, look at this. So, I mean, the elves in the game are more like fairies. I'm sure, as you can tell, there are two types of fairies. Elves. There are the light elves and the dark elves. Literally, I swear to you, that's what they're called. And it's such a, oh, look at this. This is beautiful. Look at this. Like, that's gorgeous. And then, oh, this is the image for Radiata Stories. You want, like art for it, like that's Jack and Ridley, and also Gantz. And if you know, Gantz is a beautiful cinnamon roll that needs to be protected. Literally just the best thing ever. And I can actually give you guys a brief, like, oh my god, what is this? Oh, here we go. Okay, so this would be like the roster. This is characters that you can recruit at one point or another. This is obviously Jack on, not that side. This side, this is Jack. This is your boy. This is Gantz. Precious cinnamon roll. If you know, you know. Here we have Ridley on not that side. I'm mirrored. Sorry, hang on. Here we go. This is Ridley. She's my everything. I adore her. And obviously you have just random characters around town. Like literally, let me see if I can show you guys how many characters you can recruit in this game. Look, that whole section is recruiting. I'm still going. It's still recruiting. It's still, oh, hang on. Okay. Basically this much is all about the characters that you can recruit in the game. All this whole section is recruitable characters. And I mean, like literally it's just all kinds. Like here we have a goblin. I know him. I recognize him. Pain in the butt. Goblins are interesting. And it's such an incredible game. It really is just so beautiful and so emotional. You have obviously your game maps. This isn't obviously spoiling anything unless you can speak Japanese from a distance. And yeah, there we go. There's one of my all-time favorite games is Radiata Stories. I just wanted to share that with you guys and see if any of you had played it. Honest to God, I don't know if there was ever a following for it in the States. I wouldn't think so because this never got translated. Like this does not exist in English. Trust me, I checked. And which is a shame because it is such an amazing game. Like if they ever re-released it, I would buy it. I would buy a special edition, give me DLC, give me art books, give me statues. I will buy them. I literally will save up for them, not all at once, but I will buy them because it's such a good game. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, everybody. Please, let me know, would you play this? Like, it's such an amazing game. Hopefully, I am able to show you guys some interesting stuff. There's probably going to be a lot of cutscenes underneath this because I'm just going to boot up the game and play it from the beginning. And, hopefully I'll be able to show you guys some gameplay. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye. Oh, why don't you try a Voltiplo against the target dummy? The square button. Okay. Oh my god. Sabotage! Sabotage! I'm not trying to gas. Just, I'm sorry. It's not even that funny. I'm sorry, it just went right in front of him.